Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Welcome into the Sportsmemo College Basketball Betting Podcast. I'm Drew Martin alongside Brent Crow. Brent, welcome in. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Drew. How are you?
Good. Happy to have you on. You know, college basketball betting expert here, man. Last year, up 25 units, killed it 60%. This year, pretty good as well. 11-9 on the season, had some ups and downs, but looking at your kind of results here, man, last night's game stands out. You got OT'd, took the loss. I don't know, anything you want to get off your chest to the listeners?
It happens, especially, when you play unders. The worst thing that can happen is overtime. And, last night, Michigan State, Louisville, 4 missed free throws in the last minute. Both teams were culprits, and it wound up 67-67, 134. Which was 20 points under the total, but unfortunately we had to go to overtime and wound up with a loss. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the second time that's happened in the last week. I had Florida State LSU do me the same way on Friday night. So, it's just, part of it. I hate it. I mean, I can't stand it, actually, but nothing you can do about it. And, I know that in regulation I was 20 points. I won the game by 20 points. Unfortunately, you don't get paid for those. That's the problem.
No, not at all. And not only is it you miss out on the unit win, you lose 1.1 on the loss. So 2.1 units swing on that, getting OT'd. Bad beat, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a great time to jump on, though. It's a large Wednesday card, which I love. And you got 3 plays going tonight, man. 2 4% and a 5% play, which is the top designation play we have at sportsmemo.com. You got a 3-pack up at Sportsmemo, and normally $80. You got it discounted down to $39. It's special to the podcast listeners. We have a special discount code CBBPACK at checkout, and you'll get it for half off. So under $20 for his 3-pack right now at sportsmemo.com. That discount code is CBBPACK. That's CBBPACK at checkout. Brent, we got a bunch of games we're going over on today's card. Let's start off 7:45, 7:46, 7:30 Eastern tip-off. I was about to say ACC match here, but Maryland has since moved to the Big Ten, as we all know. Virginia at Maryland, 3.5. The Cavs are laying on the road. A couple 4s out there. 129 the total. How would you look to bet this one?
Well, Virginia plays that pack line defense, and they play it well. I mean, this is, pretty much the same group they had last year as far as personnel goes. They've added a couple of guys. They've got a little 5'9" point guard that's a freshman and that has played well. But, you still got Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome and Hunter, who's an NBA prospect. I mean, for the most part, DeAndre Hunter, I guess, would be their best player. But, they added a transfer from Alabama, also Braxton Key. So still a lot of good players with Virginia. And so far this year, the results speak for themselves. 6-0. They haven't allowed over 59 points in a game. Right now, their defense is rated number 2 in the country, only behind Michigan. And the one thing they make you do is they make you work. Teams are taking almost 20 seconds per possession to get a shot off, and that's the top or the worst in the country, best in the country, whichever way you want to look at it. But Virginia makes teams work. They're playing a Maryland team that right now starts 2 freshmen, has a 3rd one in the rotation, a very young team that has basically not played anybody. And Maryland also 6-0, but their best opponent so far has been Marshall, which was a 104-67 win in their last game. So now Maryland goes from running up and down the court against Marshall to playing Virginia, a slow team. And, I think it's going to be a struggle for Maryland, even on their home court. While those youngsters, it's the first time they've seen this defense. And like I said, they haven't faced anything like it so far with other than Marshall. The next best opponent they faced was Hofstra, and they also like to get it up and down a little bit. So, it's going to be a big adjustment for Maryland's youngsters. I think it's going to be a struggle. I like Virginia to win the game. And then, the total at 130, the thing about Virginia games at 130, you're not going to go over very many times with Virginia, and you'll see Virginia games lined anywhere from 120 to 130, maybe even a 115 when they play somebody really slow in conference play. But I don't think, my rule with Virginia is if you get it up around 130, just play under. Anything less than that, you got to do a little more of a handicap with the game. But the opponent doesn't matter when Virginia plays. They're playing slow, regardless of who they play. Home, road, doesn't matter. Always going to be slow, and yet the odds, the lines are set based on their opponent a lot of times. And I think there's, that's an advantage that you have with Virginia. It doesn't matter who they play, but not everybody realizes that.
And you think that's what the odds makers, what they're missing as far as why would they put it out at 129 if, Virginia is more likely to control the pace, being the more talented team?
I think, with a lot of totals, the teams, what people do, odds makers and other bettors, they look at both teams and kind of have an aggregate of what their pace is and what the scores of their games are. And with Virginia, it doesn't matter. You go back and look at last year's results for Virginia, and you very rarely see any. It doesn't matter who the opponent is; it's basically the same every time. And I think like I said, when they're making numbers with Virginia, you'll see there'll be 15 points difference based on their opponent. That's the only thing that changes, and yet their scores very rarely change.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff as far as the adjusted and Virginia still covering the pace there. There might be value in that one. We got 759, 760. Purdue, Florida State, 150 the total in this one. A couple 149.5s out there. Looks like the Seminoles laying 3.5 or 4, depending where you shop, Brent.
Yeah, Florida State's on their home court here. They're coming off the battle for Atlantis, where they won 2 games against UAB and LSU and then lost to Villanova in the final 66-60. And with Florida State, they played good defense as well. Not as good as Virginia, but pretty solid defense. They do it a little differently, put a little more pressure on, got some shot blockers. But on offense, they will get it up and down the court. They're not a good half-court offensive team. And you saw that when they faced LSU and Villanova, where when LSU got back, Villanova got back, Florida State struggled in the half court, and that's been the case under Hamilton for several years. In the open court, with all the athletes they have, they're as good as anybody, but you get them in a half court game against a team that sort of matches up with them, and they struggle. Purdue, kind of the same way. Purdue likes to get it up and down the court, but you don't see outrageous numbers as far as pace goes with Purdue. They're very efficient, but they're not going to have 80 possession games for the most part, but they're going to take advantage of any opportunities they have to get out and score an easy one. And so what you have in this one, you've got a total around 150. And like I said, the last 2 games Florida State played against teams that got back on defense, and it didn't even come close to 150 in regulation. And I kind of think that may be the case here as well. Purdue, fundamentally pretty solid team, and like I said, both teams are going to take their chances or take every opportunity in the full court, but in the half court, I think it's going to be a struggle. So I would look at you look at last night's ACC Big Ten Challenge. There's some games that were low scoring that Purdue or Pittsburgh and Iowa should have been high scoring, and it wound up a 1-point game, low scoring. The Michigan State game, even though it wound up going over in overtime, but in regulation it was 134. So when you get a lot of times when you get high level opponents, when there's it's not really. This game doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's on ESPN and high-profile Big Ten ACC Challenge. It feels more like a tournament game, and then, a lot of times that slows the pace a little bit as well. So I would lean to the under here, and maybe even Purdue getting the points on the road.
All right, we got 761, 762 UNC versus Michigan. Another ACC Big Ten battle here. 147 being the total. A couple 146.5s out there as well. 3.5 the Wolverines laying.
And here's a game that's the opposite of Virginia, North Carolina. They run, period. I mean, they're going to get up and down the court. Right now, North Carolina uses the least or second least amount of time per possession on offense as anybody. They get a shot up every 12.9 seconds that they have the ball. And, they've played Texas, UCLA in their last two games, and it's been high-scoring games in both of those. 94-78 win over UCLA and a 92-89 loss to Texas. And Carolina, defensively, they're not bad, but they give up some easy ones at times, and again, on offense, they're definitely going to try to score as quickly as possible. And on the other hand, you've got a Michigan team playing the best defense of anybody right now. We saw what they did to Villanova on the road. 46 points allowed in 64 possessions at Villanova. This team so far has been phenomenal in their 6-0 start. But, Michigan, I've watched them play offensively. They'll push it a little bit. They're not as slow as Virginia is on offense, so they will take advantage of any opportunities, and they're going to have some against North Carolina. There's no doubt about that. But, the total, like I said, is kind of an aggregate here. A North Carolina total probably would be closer to 155 on most games. Michigan's have been around 135. So, what they did, they kind of averaged it. And you've got a 146. Last year in Chapel Hill, it was 86-70. North Carolina got the win. This one's on the road in Ann Arbor. You would expect Michigan to control the pace a little bit more. But like I said, from what I've seen against North Carolina, they're going to get it up and down. It doesn't matter who they're playing. So interesting matchup here with the contrast of styles, and a little lean to Michigan to win the game the way they've played so far. But as far as the total goes, probably a little lean to the over.
Brent, let's get something out there that needs to be said. You're an Alabama guy. You went to Alabama. I'm an Auburn guy, so little tension there. But I honestly, as least amount of tension as you can have. I definitely respect you as a college basketball handicapper. But what do you think about college basketball at Auburn and where Auburn ranks, not only in the SEC, in the nation, as far as what they're able to do there in the atmosphere in Auburn Arena?
Well, first of all, I'm not one of the Alabama. I don't have a flag in my yard like 75% of the people, it seems like, do around. I have no Alabama stickers on my car, no flags in the yard. Just get that out of the way. And I'm not really that big of a fan of anybody. I'm watching games to learn stuff and try to find advantages. But I have been very impressed with Auburn. What Bruce Pearl has done has been remarkable. A friend of mine and I were talking the other night about the atmosphere at Auburn compared to Alabama. The atmosphere he has created in the gym there is phenomenal. And you go compare that to Alabama, it's like a morgue, and Auburn's like Mardi Gras. It's unreal. And all the credit goes to Bruce Pearl, because there were a lot of years where you couldn't give tickets away to Auburn. And the other day we looked at the Auburn's playing UAB in a couple of weeks, and I thought, he said something about, we ought to go see that. And I looked on StubHub, and it was like, for a decent seat, it's like $100-something. I'm like, really? I would have thought $20 maybe, but that's what's happened when you find it's not just winning. Auburn's been winning, but it's the way they play, and Bruce Pearl, and they have a personality. In Alabama, for the most part, Whip Sanderson had a personality, but that was like it wasn't a positive one. And everybody since then that Alabama's had as a coach has had no personality, and I don't think Avery Johnson does. So. Right now Auburn definitely has the upper hand in basketball in this state, and I love watching them play. The way they play, they're fast and they shoot the three, and Pearl is definitely not stiff. He's very lively, and tonight they play St. Peter's And here's a game that, they're a 25.5-point favorite. They've had a week off since they went to Maui and had an impressive performance. And for the most part, when Auburn has gotten a team like this on their home court, it's been a domination. I mean, they approach 100 points. They've done so twice this year. Both of their matchups where they were big favorites, they got to 100. And, if they get anywhere near 100, this one should go over the total at 143.5 or 144.
Okay, no, good breakdown. And about the Auburn atmosphere, yeah, I graduated Auburn in 2008, and when I went there, you could just use your student ID to get into the basketball.
Who was the coach? Do you even remember?
When I first started, it was Cliff Ellis, and then it turned to I forget his name, a light-skinned black guy.
Yeah, Tony Barbie.
Tony Barbie, that's it. Yeah, and the program was never good. I don't know. Whatever happened with that?
Well, I mean, they never. It seemed like they were always not able to recruit, and then they had a lot of guys that kind of flamed out. I mean, it's not like they didn't have talent at times. I mean, the Person brothers, and they've had several other guys, but as far as being able to recruit nationally, they've never really been able to do it until Bruce Pearl got there. And then, Bruce Pearl's hit on some guys that weren't, top, 5 stars or whatever. That's helped as well. And now I think, he can recruit wherever he wants to. I mean, he's not going to get the same dudes that play for Kentucky and, one and dones, but he's definitely raised Auburn's profile. And I mean, like I said, if you watch them on TV, that place is rocking. I mean, it reminds me of Cameron Indoor.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's why, I kind of brought up the where would you rank it in the nation, because it's wild, man. I went 2 years ago when Auburn was like a 500 team, and me and my buddy were looking around like, man, this is great atmosphere, and it brings they were pouring drinks. You could have alcohol drinks in some sections. It was pretty wild. I was pretty impressed with what they were able to do there. Not only what Bruce Pearl is doing, but also the new Auburn Arena where it is on campus. It's a pretty good atmosphere, so something to use in your handicapping. Brent, you led on to the fact that Auburn has put up near 100 against lesser quality opponents. St. Peter's, I haven't dug too deep into this team this year. I know a few years ago they made the tournament. How good are they this year?
Well, they've got a new coach in Shaheen Holloway, and St. Peter's was the team that they played. Which conference is it? It's one I always get all the alphabet conferences. Let me get it right. They're in the Metro Atlantic Athletic, MAAC. So
yeah,
and with St. Peter's, I mean, for the last, I don't know how long the guy was there, John Dunn. He was there forever, and he was Mr. Walk it up, play slow. I mean, last year they were 350. The year before that they were 347. I mean, in the last 5 years, the highest they've been tempo-wise is 326. So they have been a very, very slow team under John Dunn. And he left and went to Marist this year. They hired Shaheen Holloway. I don't know if you remember him or not. He played at Seton Hall. And he's adjusted, they're playing a little faster. They're up to 68 possessions, which is, it's light speed compared to what they did with John Dunn. But, he's still, as far as talent goes, they still lack a little bit. And, they played one decent team, North Carolina State. It was 85-57 loss. So, but 69 possessions in that game, and it wound up at 142. And, like I said, it's going to be an Auburn win. I mean, the only question is, do they come out a little bit flat after going to Maui, hadn't played in a week? Does it take them, 10 minutes to get fired up and going? But, and the students, I think the students will be there this week, if I'm not mistaken. But, you may not have that atmosphere, but eventually, I mean, the talent discrepancy and the way Auburn plays, I mean, they're going to take over and score some points. I mean, you're not going to see a 70-40 game here.
Yeah, no, not likely at all. And Brent, wanted to start bringing in kind of a get-back game or degenerate special, if you will, on the podcast for the college basketball. So we got one here, 10 p.m. Eastern tip-off on tonight's card, which is a big card, by the way. We got a bunch of games, a lot of value on the card. Portland State at Stanford, 146.5, 147 being the total. Stanford Cardinal laying 12.
Portland State is a team that last year, early in the season, I made a lot of money on playing over the total. They got a new coach, and he really was an up-tempo guy. And they are again this year. I mean, they are still 74, 75 possessions a game. The problem is last year they had some guys that could shoot it. They could score. And I don't know if you remember last year or not, but they hosted a tournament. They played at the Rose Garden in Portland. They wound up playing Duke, and it was 99-81, but they were real close for about three-quarters of that game. They had a 2-point loss to Butler, and then they beat Stanford. And this is a Portland State team in 2017, 15-16, 13-18 the year before that. I mean, this is, and then all of a sudden last year they won 20 games and were really, like I said, they were really good. They wound up and their best player got hurt, and they didn't do anything in conference player in the postseason, but they were a team that I capitalized on playing over the total several times. And then this year, same coach, same philosophy, and 14% three-point shooting so far. So, they played Oregon, Riverside, and Santa Barbara, and the most they've scored is 71 points. They're still getting up and down the court, but it's comical how bad they are from three. Drew, this is
14% is pretty bad, man.
Yeah, but you look at they got a guy that's 1 for 10. They got another guy that's 1 for 13. Another guy 1 for 10. Another guy 1 for 11, and another guy 1 for 13. So those five guys have combined to hit 5 threes in like 60 attempts. I mean, they've got one guy that's 4 for 10. He's on fire, and then they've got another guy that's 2 for 6. I mean, and that's it. So, I mean, you don't expect. I mean, that's just historically bad. 14.5% three-point shooting. You would expect that to pick up a little bit. Now, will it against Stanford? I don't know, but it's hard to be that bad for a long period of time. And I think they're not going to increase it to 40, but I mean they're going to hit 30% over the season. And the point is that if they're hitting some threes, this total would be 155 and not 146. So there is, and it's 146 and a half, 147. Stanford's not afraid to get it up and down the court a little bit. Stanford's going to score at home against Portland State for sure. And if Portland State can hit a few threes, then this one's going to go over the total.
Brent, great stuff, man. Good analysis. Love having you on the podcast. You got the 3-pack going tonight, and we got the special discount code CBBPACK at checkout. You can get it for less than $20. It's already discounted to $39 from $80. So huge discounts there with CBBPACK for his 3-pack at sportsmemo.com. You get to jump on Brent's college basketball card tonight after that. After getting OT'd that bad beat last night, so it's a good jump on point. I'm going to bet it personally, Brent, and. Yeah, so a lot of good stuff at sportsmemo.com for today's action. Brent, we got a huge college basketball card tonight. Do you see more value in these large cards, 50-plus games, rather than, say, like a 8 or 9 or 10 game card?
Absolutely. I mean, right now in the early part of the season, what I'm looking for are teams that are priced wrong. And so if there's more chances of that happening when there's 50 games than there are 10. And, there are some games or some teams that I found that, Portland State last year was a perfect example of one that I was able to play for 7 or 8 games and play over the total because nobody paid attention to them and didn't realize that they were really getting up and down the court. And there's several teams like that this year that are doing something under a new coach that they hadn't done in the past. And, you get value with those teams until everybody realizes. And there was a couple of them going tonight. So, the more opportunities that you have on a given night, the more games there are, the more opportunities you have to make money.
Makes a lot of sense, man. And you hit 60% last year, 11-9 start this year. The bad beat last night, and your 3-pack up at sportsmemo.com right now. And guys, use the coupon code CBBPACK at checkout for get all 3 plays for less than $20. So check that out at sportsmemo.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow with the college football Every Game on the Board podcast with Robbie Vino and Teddy Covers. Other than that, best of luck with your bets. We'll talk with you tomorrow.
Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.